Coach BK. This is video 2 of a 5-part video series on stress and gut health. So today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of stress. What's actually going on with the body? And we are going to learn that stress isn't bad. It's an innate system that is vital. It's needed. It is overused. It is kind of run ragged. And so once we understand some of the anatomical, the physiological aspects of it, it's going to give us power and inspire us to do a little things different. So video 1, more about real life, how it just comes hard and fast at you. Video 2, this video is on the anatomy of stress, what's actually going on. And then video 3 is going to talk about like 5 ways to manage your energy. Stress is part of that. So we're going to take a little bit of a mind shift and a little bit of a different perspective on managing that. So you want to follow along with these video series. It's going to kind of wrap it all up in a nice bow on how to be healthier and why it matters for the gut and doing endurance training and all of this stuff. So here we go, the anatomy of stress. Dun, 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 dun. So first of all, stress is a overused term, something that brings with it a negative connotation. A lot of people say, I need to get rid of the stress in my life. If that person isn't serving me, aka it's conflict or that it's stressful to them, then they get rid of it. And really, we need to be a little bit smarter about how we respond to energetic episodes in our life. Some of those happen to be stressful events, but stress is a stimulus that causes change. Okay? We work out, we stress the body a little bit. Hopefully you're training smart, so you stress the body smart, and then it stimulates it to change. Strength training stimulates the muscles to grow. You do little bit micro tears when you do something a little bit outside of the zone that you can do, a little bit outside of that comfort zone, and then change happens. Repeatedly, consistent, smart stress events turns a 170-pound individual female that can hardly breathe and certainly couldn't swim into a 3-time Ironman triathlete. Consistent application of smart training and pushing just a little bit stressful events. Okay. What happens is in our society, we push too much. A lot of things are not equal balance. So you go to work and you just get told all the things that you do wrong, but there's not a lot of accolades and stuff like that. So things aren't balanced, and that creates kind of a long-term chronic stress where you're not happy and whatnot. But that's kind of more of a video 4 and 5 topic. Okay. We're going to keep this to physiological because we don't do enough of the understanding of physiologically what's going on in the body and then what we do to help physiologically so we have the ability to maybe make some emotional, mental changes that long-term help. So it's a stimulus. And then couple that with the fact that you have an innate system. So if you've read the book, Calm the F Down and Rise to the Occasion, that's probably the best description that I have ever seen. And if you want to catch the podcasting we did on it, that's available as well. I'll put that in the notes on the resource link for this video series. So they talk about the monkey mind, the professor mind, or this chimp mind. It sort of gives it kind of a bad rap a little bit. It's quick. That's the point. And it can go all over the place, right? But that's because we are working to bring in stimulus, understand the stimulus that's coming in at an innate level, okay? Like a fight or flight. Like my primary goal in life is to survive, right? It wasn't very long ago that it was so much more dangerous to be alive than now. Okay, so this is where and in the animal world, you see it a lot more, right? They need to protect themselves. They need to be aware of their environment all of the time. so they can survive and not get eaten by a tiger. So this system, this stress response, this fight or flight response is innate. It's quick, it's sharp. It's one of the primary things that you do in order to stay alive. It needs to work faster than your logical mind, because your logical mind is so much slower and it goes through so many different things. The system is quick. And when you understand what it does, you'll understand why it's so quick. It needs to do things proactively so you can run from that tiger and not get eaten, or you can freeze and not get seen by the tiger and not get eaten. Okay, so here we go. The anatomy of stress. The article that I wrote has a lot of cool kind of smarty words and stuff like that. So if you want to read more educated words, I wrote them, but I'm not going to say them that much. I'm going to kind of skim through this. So it's been shown that stress creates more wear and tear on the body than associated with negative thoughts. If we're not coping well with what's going on, that's the problem. And we start addressing this in video 2 and 3. But here's what's going on just at a high level with stress. Okay, stress results in your digestive enzymes going down, causing the pH of your system to not be low enough. Okay, so the pH in your belly needs to be super low in order to digest the food that you're eating. So if you're secreting less digestive enzymes, digestion slows down. This is why you're not hungry when you're at work and stressed out or whatnot, okay? Or if you're doing like a long, hard bike ride, hills and stuff, this is why you've got to fall back on routine and making yourself do certain things and making your nutrition easy, not eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches necessarily, maybe drinking more of your calories, because you get less digestive enzymes when you're working harder, when you're tackling those hills and trying not to wreck your bike and die going 45 miles down a hill and trying to survive, okay? So the stress response also causes oxygen in blood to be diverted from digestion to go to your brain and to certain muscles, fight or flight. Okay, it doesn't matter if you have a stomach and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches if you're dead from the saber-toothed tiger. Okay. So there's a difference between kind of acute stress and chronic stress, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But this wear and tear over time, over and over and over, really adds up in the body. It's just astounding what happens, but when we get into the nitty-gritty, you'll kind of get a feel for it. So what is stress? Stress is any type of physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes tension in the body. And when they talk about tension, they talk about this state of awareness, state of decision making. What do I need to do? Right? Which causes chemical changes, behavioral changes, physical changes in the body. We need to know if we're going to run or stay. Okay? Do we need, what do we need to do? That's why certain things happen during a stress response. So things that can be stressful, that are a little bit off the chain, that cause a lot of wear and tear, and for this whole fight or flight system, aka the hormonal system, to become deficient, on fire. Okay? Work stress, unhappy job, constant deadlines, conflict when, there's not a lot of communication and you're not doing that part well. Exercise is stress. There is no two ways about it. Endurance training is stressful. And there's enough research out there suggesting and supporting that HIIT training, shorter stuff, is healthier for the body. That's only physical. Okay, that is not the ample amounts of wonderful things that you can get from endurance training. I wrote an article recently on the things that Ironman has done in my life. I would not be anywhere remotely close to how happy I am now and successful and whatnot had it not been for Ironman. So I'm not saying not do it. I'm just saying there is an element to endurance training that is unhealthy, and you're never going to be able to get around that. However, you can do lots of things to mitigate that. And that's where we go into nutrition and rest days and maybe cycling through things a little bit different. So mental stress can be dealing with the heat and heat training. Well, that's physical stress, sorry. Mental stress, relationship, past traumas, stuff, dramas, responsibilities, conflict can be mental stressful. Being sick is actually stressful. That sounds kind of funny and weird. We get sick from being stressed, but the illness itself is stressed differently. It produces other kind of negative wear and tear type activities in the body. Childbirth, when we all know that raising kids can be stressful, but being pregnant physiologically is stressful. Food intolerances are stressful. Allergies are stressful. We're going to be talking about what the difference is as far as gut health, food intolerances, and allergies. So stay tuned for that. Toxins are stressful. Pollutants are stressful. Swimming in chlorine is swimming in pollutants and toxins. And it's stressful to the body because your body kind of pulls that stuff in and has to deal with it. So for those of you that are in the camp where you get the crazy snotty nose because you've been swimming, that is an example of too much stress, and it might be an example of some nutritional deficiencies because you do have mechanisms for dealing with that. And research is showing that maybe 50% of us don't make enough antioxidant specific for dealing with toxin, pollutants kind of things when we get inundated, when we're showering with chlorine in the water, we're swimming in chlorine, how it's drying out our skin, it's doing some other things too. Stress is legitimate, and it's legitimate regardless if it's perceived or real. If you have something that is stressing you out and makes you sad but doesn't make the next person sad, that doesn't make it any less real or any less stressful or any less unhealthy for the body. It's legit. Now, can you change that perception? Absolutely. That's more in video 3 and 4. Okay. Let's see here. Let's move on. We can think about the nervous system in two ways. You have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Funny how we have another equal and opposite pair. Moon, sun, light, dark, hot, cold. It's all energy. It's all energy. It's all equal. It all balances out. So the sympathetic nervous system you can think about as the gas pedal in your car. It makes things go. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the brakes in your car, and it makes things slow down, okay? So your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. It's innate, it's fast, it's vital, it's needed. It's that one that saves your bacon when you're driving down the road and you just catch out of the corner of your eye some semi trying to run you off the road, and instantly you respond. You don't even know you're responding. You look around. You're probably a good driver and you already know what's around you. So then you know to move, duck, and weave, and you don't get flat on the road because you were able to respond quick. You didn't even consciously do that. That's fight or flight. That's a really good system on point. And then, you know, that skin flush afterwards, the kind of jacked feeling afterwards, that's your fight or flight system. That's all of those stress hormones going on, etc. Okay, so again, we already talked, it slows the movement of food down. The sympathetic nervous system prepares you for action fast so you don't die. Kick into gear, more energy, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. The parasympathetic nervous system, the brakes in the car, equally important, and this is a system we don't know how to use as much intentionally, mindfully. This is where the yoga comes in, the breathing comes in, the praying comes in, going to church, being with community, etc. Okay, so your parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest system, controls digestion, sexual arousal, salivation, aka digestion, urination and defecation. So in and out, and things that make you foxy. Okay. Conserves energy for survival activities. So it's the yin of the yang of the other system that's meant to keep your bacon alive. Okay. Here's what's going on in this fight or flight system. The hypothalamus is a gland in the brain. The article will have pictures. Hypothalamus is a gland in the brain that tells the pituitary, also in the brain, to turn on hormones to talk to the adrenal glands to do certain things. So see how it's a hormone, talk, back and forth. Okay, it's not just one. It's not cortisol only that makes things difficult. We need to stop bashing cortisol. Cortisol is not the enemy. Okay, there's probably 4 other hormones that had been involved prior to cortisol being produced and released. Okay, this activates the sympathetic nervous system, this hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, cortisol, boom, fast. I like to like switch, boom, boom. Activates the sympathetic nervous system. This increases your heart rate. When you get stressed out in a meeting, you feel this right here, right? Increases your heart rate, increases blood flow to muscles in the brain, and affects your blood sugar. Your blood sugar needs to rise in order to feed the muscles if they decide to go. Okay, it needs to be readily available. You are not burning fat for fuel when you're running from the tiger. You will not. You'll be dead. It's a slow process. So blood sugar rises to provide fuel in the bloodstream via the liver breaking down sugar. Okay. Norepinephrine is released. This hormone works to increase blood pressure. Along with epinephrine, the adrenal glands make adrenaline. The body then prioritizes what's going on. The body prioritizes. You don't need to be digesting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich if you're stressed out. If you're in a meeting, if you're having an argument, or if you are biking your tail off on a tall, high hill, steep hill, there it is, when it's hot. It's all kind of the same to the body. So that's what's going on. Heart rate goes up when you're stressed. So if you're all stressed out about a bike workout or getting up that hill, it's going to be a double whammy. The effort required is going to raise up your heart rate, and your stress is going to raise up your heart rate. So your heart rate's going to go higher than what it needs to. Keep that in mind. Same with swimming. Holy moly. Yes. Anyway, okay. Where are we at here? Prioritizes. Smooth muscles contract, including the intestines. Blood is diverted from the blood vessels in the intestines that goes to your muscles and your brain, everything that is required to keep you alive. And it also goes to your brain and such like that. Your brain is a sugar-heavy hog. So for mental sharpness, in order to think really well, that's another reason why it frees up all that sugar that goes into your bloodstream so you don't get eaten by the tiger. Okay? Digestive enzymes go down. We already talked about that. After this initial surge of stress, if the stressor is still present, the body then activates the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. Okay, this is a hormonal system that keeps your body in a state of readiness to deal with stress by releasing other hormones. So this is where we get into the chronic stress of, you know, you're unhappy in your job, your boss is a jerk face, kind of stealing your work, doing whatever, not telling you thank you, you're unhappy, and then you go home and, you know, maybe the kids are hard, you don't have enough to be the best parent that you want to be, so then yada, yada, yada. Chronic stress. And then, so that just always puts you on a state of alert. So this is why when your appetite goes skyrocketing, not only are you calorie deprived during the day because you didn't eat enough food, you finally get to watching Grey's Anatomy and you're drinking a glass of wine and you're epically hungry because you haven't eaten enough calories and you have finally slowed down enough for your appetite, for your digestive system to kick in, secrete the enzymes and decide, and the salivation goes up and decides, I want some food and I need a lot because I'm way behind. that make sense? It's a train wreck if you don't learn how to get this in control. So real quick, over time, this is what happens when the stress is left unchecked or managed incorrectly. In video 3, we talk about not managing stress, but managing energy, because most of the things that cause this are mental and emotional. Those are the bigger things that we need to be taking a hit on. It's not, I mean, if you're sick, yes, but it's more mental, emotional, dealing with our world. Okay? You can always make improvements on that. Not get rid of the person that's stressing you out necessarily, but make some changes. Okay, here we go. Left unchecked, this stuff will increase belly fat. Coach Colin talked about visceral fat. If you haven't seen Coach Colin, you need to. Visceral fat's awesome. It's terribly dangerous. It's fat around your organs, and it's mostly in your belly. It's that beer belly. It's ladies around your hips. That's the hormonal fat. It's this dangerous fat. So it releases cytokines. Cytokines cause inflammation. It's just a chemical that causes inflammation, and that's a whole different train wreck coming. Inflammation is being shown to be the source of almost all diseases. Couple inflammation with some dietary deficiencies and malabsorption issues, and you have a plethora of medical conditions, autoimmune conditions, that if you just started to manage energy better, addressed inflammation, life would be so much better. So causes inflammation. So the list is heart disease, vascular disease, depression, dementia, blood sugar management, diabetes, low muscle tone, increased appetite. And visceral fat freaking releases estrogen. So if you're a female that already has hormonal balance issues, just the sheer fact that the visceral fat is there makes it harder for you to lose it, because it makes you more estrogen heavy. Namaste. Okay. Food intolerances and food allergies, which are two different things. Chemicals during stress release in the body releases chemicals such as histamines, which can intensify allergies. With the nose with swimming. That's why it's getting a little off the chain, because you're teetering towards battling inflammation too much. You get a little bit too much chlorine, the system goes, enough already. And you get that snotty, crazy nose. Or you get sick really quick. Bam, it hits you, lays you out. Leaky gut. Leaky gut is a horrible, horrible thing that just about everybody has, and causes a plethora of bad things. We're going to talk specifically about leaky gut. It's off the chain, needs to be addressed, okay? So leaky gut is where the mucosal lining in your intestines, in your whole, digestive tract, mouth to anus, that mucosal lining protects you from the environment because it's open. Your mouth is open. It's a whole thing that goes in. And so there's just tons of pollutants and just crap going through. Your mucosal lining is a huge advocate for you being able to deal with your environment. And so during stress, inflammation starts to break down that mucosal lining. Other things happen. The gut gets leaky. Bad things go in. Good things aren't able to be absorbed. There isn't a happy balance with your gut bacteria, and tons of stuff happens, like allergies, hormonal imbalances, autoimmune issues, absorption issues, and from there you get second tier stuff, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Elevated blood sugar. So cortisol prevents insulin, which puts cells into glucose into cells. So if I said that correctly, cortisol inhibits insulin. Insulin puts glucose into cells. So if you had glucose in your bloodstream and you wanted to put it into your cell for energy, cortisol inhibits that. So if you're stressing out and you're wanting to get up that steep hill, that stressing out is actually inhibiting you a little bit from being fueled correctly for the endurance athlete. Interesting thought. Too much sugar in the blood is dangerous. The sugar molecule is big, and it's like a bowling ball going through, like, you know, kind of like a hose thing, not a bowling ball. You get the idea. Grit, big pebbles going through, and it damages the inside lining of the tube. Elevated blood sugar causes insulin resistance. That's a whole different thing. That's kind of like the step below diabetes. It's not a great place to be. So where do you go? Chronic stress increases inflammation, which they directly relate to anxiety and depression. That's because all of this stuff going on, your gut is your second brain. You have so many neurotransmitters that are produced in your gut, and so if you have inflammation going on, leaky gut, your mucosal lining is off whack, you have your bacteria is off, you can be depressed just because of that, because you're not making the neurotransmitters that you need to because of X, Y, and Z. An altered microbiome. So microbiome means the balance of bacteria. Oh my gosh, what's the statistics? 10% of your body is human and the rest of it is bacteria, microorganisms. Freaky to think about, but it's true. When you die, the bacteria is the reason why you decompose, or else you just sit there. Think about it, okay? It's so super interesting, a little weird. Diversity in the gut and in your microbiome is important. You don't know, but you have bacteria that interacts with estrogen specifically. They all have a different role. There's a bacteria on animal feces that produces vitamin B12. That's its job. That just stuff doesn't magically show up. A bacteria makes it off of animal feces. Sorry. Fact. Google it. So chronic stress, increased risk for GERD, increased acid reflux, increased digestion, ulcers. That's because your digestive enzymes get all whacked out. The protective lipids in the stomach and along the lining and the mucosal lining take a big hit. That's why all of this stuff is happening. Increased risk for SIBO. So the intestines squeeze in a synchronous manner to push stuff out. And so inflammation causes muscle contractions and stuff not to work right. So movement out is inhibited or deficient. And so bacteria can't be swept out. And so that's what they're saying about SIBO. That's another story, but we're not covering that right now. And then lower immunity. Cortisol inhibits the immune system. We're going to talk more about a different video on how the immune system works. But lower immunity, cortisol inhibits a lot of different things. Inhibits the insulin. It's sort of like they're computers a little bit. Computers for resources as far as the building blocks to make them. We will talk a little bit about like testosterone and hormonal imbalances, and when you're stressed out, you have less testosterone because testosterone and cortisol need some of the same building blocks, and because of our leaky gut and inflammation and we don't have enough to supply both. So females generally have imbalance issues because of all of this stuff, because you don't have enough of the building blocks to make all the cortisol, to make all the estrogen, to make all the progesterone in order to be balanced. So the cortisol needs to go down, and it's mostly between the ears. Okay. So an interesting thing about stress, OMG, the body works to create a homeostasis, a set place. So if you're eating a lot of sugar, it's going to set its kind of daily mojo to want that amount of sugar. This is where addiction comes in. If someone is doing heroin or whatnot, and this is how they're feeling good, and this is what they're doing, and this is how the neurochemistry kind of gets into a set point in the brain, addiction, boom, right? There's just this crazy mechanism, and it is needed for survival, but it's got completely off the chain because of all the things that we have in our life now that are not optimal. Okay. So this stress point, the point is, is that we get used to a certain amount of stress and that becomes our set point. So then you need more stress, more of a jerk in order to get you to move. So an example, the other day, I've been under quite a bit of stress and I have noticed that my reaction is a little bit slower. So on a ladder, I see my two dogs, they're getting into a tiff and I need to get off the ladder and go help, right? And I noticed that there was a slow reaction time and I needed to kind of gear myself up. So you needed more cortisol, more in order to act and move. My fight or flight system was dampened at that point in time. That's not a great place to be if you notice that. You kind of like freeze for a little bit when you know that you should move. And that is an example of how this, under chronic stress, your stress point sets up higher. So then you need more cortisol. You need more of a thing to get you to respond fast, and your response is slower. This is lower immunity too. Your immune system should be fast and sharp and move, and you should get sick fast and heal fast instead of getting sick and last like for a week or 2 or 3, right? A sharp immune system, an allergic response is what you want, not this slow thing, okay? You're meant to be sharp and fast. So under chronic stress, your stress point, and then what makes you feel good, it all gets kind of recalibrated, okay? So that is the anatomy of stress and what it does on the body. It is off the chain. Over and over, smart people with lots of letters behind their name are saying you can eat excellent, you can exercise, but if you don't manage stress well, you aren't going to get any healthier. You're not going to lose weight. If you have things that really rub you wrong, like, you know, where is it? Is it struggling with kids? Is it, and we're going to get into more of this in video 4, asking questions. Asking the questions on what triggers your stress response and why. And continue asking why until you get the answer that makes you cry, or you look in the mirror and you're like, dang it, man. But that's the part of being brave. You look at that and you're like, oh, okay, all right. So like for me, I alluded earlier in a different video on when I'm in a meeting, and I've healed this up mostly, but, you know, been working for the last 10 years with this I don't feel good enough kind of thing. And that is probably the deep down stressor that would cause me to react more in stress in a meeting when my boss stole my crap and try to take credit for it himself, because it pokes that button of I'm not good enough. It wasn't about the boss and it wasn't about him necessarily. It was just more about me. What's going on with me? Why did that trigger a response in me? So if you understand that stuff, that's how you can help manage stress, the emotional and the mental stress. And then so you take a 2-fold or 3 or 4-fold approach. I'm sorry, it's raining all of a sudden. You deal with the physiological needs of the body. If you have leaky gut, you need to address that. If you have inflammation going on, you need to address that. And then you start working on energy management things, or learning how to deal with your world a little bit more positively so you can rebuild into your fight or flight system being less on fire, more even keel, a little bit happier and healthier. So check out lesson video 3, 4, and 5. We're going to talk a little bit more nitty-gritty about that, and then there's going to be a whole different series on how to address some of the physiological stuff going on. So let me know if you have any questions. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube, or to get on the email list, because all of this stuff is going to go out on the Brave Soul Coaching email list, and there will be a link down there to do that. So I hope you're having a brilliant day. Namaste, everybody.